AI-generated images of extreme poverty, child and violence survivors are flooding stock photo sites, increasingly being used by leading health NGOs. Good morning, everybody. This is AI with Kyle. It looks like an AWS cluster is down, which has taken down lots of Amazon services, obviously. A bunch of banks, apparently Roblox and Fortnite are down, which, considering this is the half term in the UK, I'm sure is causing a huge amount of anguish to parents right now because their kids can't get on Roblox. Anyway, so we've got a couple of things, no big news, so I wanted to use this as a chance to look at Ethan Mollick's new opinionated guide to using AI right now. He updated it, looks like yesterday. He updates it every few months, so we're going to do a deep dive on that. But before I do that, I want to do a couple of quick little pieces, one from Andrej Karpathy, one from Simon Willison, talking about Claude skills, and then also one about poverty. I'm not sure if I can say that word on live stream, even though it's in this context, it is not, definitely not lascivious. But let's hop in first with Gizmodo covering Andrej Karpathy, and the headline, which is a bit misleading here, is even the inventor of vibe coding says vibe coding can't cut it. So Andrej Karpathy came up with the term vibe coding earlier this year. I want to say about February he coined the term. We'd been using AI to help with coding prior to this, but he's the guy who came up with the term, and he was one of OpenAI's co-founders. He also has a fantastic YouTube channel. Then he has a couple of very good videos on that. If you go onto aiwithkyle.com, scroll to the bottom, there's an AI learning guide, and it includes his trilogy, the Karpathy trilogy. So make sure you check them out. This article on Gizmodo is saying that even the inventor of the term vibe coding says vibe coding can't cut it. This is a little bit misleading now that I've actually read this article, but let's quickly go through it. It's been over a year since OpenAI co-founder Andrej Karpathy exited the company. In the time since he's been gone, he coined and popularized the term vibe coding, I think it was back in February, March, to describe the practice of farming out coding projects to AI tool. But earlier this week, when he released his own open source model called Nano Chat, he admitted that he wrote the whole thing by hand, vibes be damned. It's bizarre seeing Gizmodo, which is a tech website, tech-based publication, being anti-tech. It's very strange. He put together something called Nano Chat. Let me put it up on the screen. So Nano Chat is, let me find the GitHub. There we go. A very slimlined, very efficient model called Nano Chat, which you can deploy locally. So Nano Chat, according to Karpathy, is a minimal, from-scratch, full-stack training and inference pipeline. So it allows you to feed in your own data and to create your own large language model that is designed to let anyone build a large language model with a ChatGPT style chatbot interface in a matter of hours and for as little as $100 in training costs. Karpathy said the project contains about 8,000 lines of quite clean code. This is Andrej Karpathy being modest. He's very modest. He's an extremely smart man, which he wrote by hand, not necessarily by choice, but because he found AI tools couldn't do what they needed. Quoting Karpathy here, it's basically entirely handwritten with tab autocomplete. I tried to use Claude/Codex agents a few times, but they just didn't work well enough at all and net unhelpful. That's a very different attitude than what Karpathy has projected in the past, though notably he described vibe coding as something best for throwaway weekend projects. In his post that is now credited with being the origin of vibe coding, Karpathy said that when using AI coding tools, he chose to fully give in to the vibes and not bother actually looking at the code. When I get an error message, I just copy paste them in with no comment. Usually that fixes it. True. But the code grows beyond my usual comprehension. I have to really read through it for a while. Sometimes the LLMs can't fix a bug, so I just work around it or ask for random changes until it goes away. Sounds like me. I'm building a project or web app. I just see stuff, say stuff, run stuff, and copy paste stuff, and it mostly works. That is vibe coding. So what this Gizmodo's article is saying is Andrej Karpathy came up with this vibe coding thing, clean coded by hand, his new large language model creating tool, Nano Chat. So they're basically saying that he's a bit of a fraud and he's hypocritical here because he's still coding by hand. This misses the point entirely, and I'm really surprised Gizmodo's putting out nonsense like this. We can use vibe coding to create things that have already been created before. So if you want to create a web app, if you want to put together a piece of software, it's fantastic for that. You can go onto it and say, hey, I want to make Duolingo, but for job applications. And it will be able to do that very well because it's working from existing patterns. When he created Nano Chat, that is something at the cutting edge. That is a frontier piece of work that he's doing because he's a genius. He's in the 99.99% of people who know how to do the very high-end frontier level research and deployment. When you're at that kind of level, you're not necessarily going to be using vibe coding because the AI won't have knowledge of how this stuff is done because he's pushing forward the envelope. He's creating something new from scratch. Vibe coding is fantastic at 99% of the work that is not at the frontier. Yes, we all like to think of ourselves as doing something unique, as doing something special, but generally we're not. Generally, we are reinventing the wheel. Maybe we are changing it around because our business is special in some way, our product is special in some way, but we are generally pulling together pieces that already exist. This is the same with most human creativity, not just vibe coding. At the level where Andrej Karpathy works, as a co-founder of OpenAI, it is pushing the envelope, and that is why he's not able to vibe code those kind of projects. But for things like web apps, and he says that explicitly, he says that he would do throwaway weekend projects using vibe coding. That's where it's really useful, is for proof of concept, MVPs, getting something done quick and dirty and getting it out there. It is not necessarily made for pushing forward the research envelope. So it just seems like a very disingenuous article from Gizmodo to mix the two up and to say that just because Andrej Karpathy is not vibe coding his cutting edge Nano Chat, then vibe coding is useless. I think it's a bit disappointing for a tech publication to be taking such a kind of an anti-tech approach on this. So of course, they do admit at the end that of course Nano Chat is not a web app, no. So it makes sense that the strategy didn't work in this case, okay? But it does highlight the limitations of such approach. Yeah, absolutely. Despite lofty promises that it's the future of programming. And then it goes on to basically dump on vibe coding a bit more. It's just a very backward article. I'm sure there's going to be lots of comments jumping in because a lot of computer scientists, a lot of coders specifically, do not like vibe coding for good reason that we've talked about before. But I'm a little bit disappointed that Gizmodo come out with this because it's not very good journalism, let's be honest. Okay, I'm going to hop over to any questions that we have, and then we're going to look at probably the use of AI images in charitable marketing campaigns. It's been used to fake poverty, which is not great. London is, the internet is down, it's grey, it's raining. I think it's a go to a cafe with a notebook and do some planning kind of day, which will be fine. Okay, I'm going to hop over to this very strange article, which is about, I'm not sure if I can say the word, but AI generated poverty fake images being used by aid agencies. So pictures depicting the most vulnerable and poorest people are being used in social media campaigns in the sector, driven by concerns over consent and cost. Okay, so because it's hard to get real images of people who are actually in need and to get the consent for them, it looks like charities are faking them. They're using artificial intelligence to generate images of poverty, of people who have been abused, of war zones. They are creating images in order to put in their marketing campaigns in order to raise money for the real people who actually need this. This is an ethical, problematic area. Let's have a look at it. AI-generated images of extreme poverty, child and violence survivors are flooding stock photo sites, increasingly being used by leading health NGOs, according to global health professionals who have voiced concerns over a new era of poverty images, because otherwise my stream will get in trouble. All over the place, people are using it, said Noah Arnold, who works at Fair Picture, a Swiss-based organisation focused on promoting ethical imagery in global development. That's very specific. That's cool. Some are actively using AI imagery, and others we know are experimenting at least. The images replicate the visual grammar of poverty, children with empty plates, cracked earth, stereotypical images, but they are being created by artificial intelligence instead. So yeah, this is obviously very problematic. The reason it's being used is good in order to help raise money to help these people. So the intentions are probably in the right place, but the methods are being used here in order to tug on heartstrings and to generate donations from people are, I would say, morally grey, probably worse than that. So while it's hard to quantify the prevalence of AI generated images, and others say that their use is on the rise, makes sense, driven by concerns over consent, so having to get consent for the photo and to be able to use it in marketing, and cost. Obviously, it's cost more to go and send a photographer out to get these images than it does just to generate them or buy them from a stock image website. Arnold said that US funding cuts to NGO budgets have made matters worse. Okay, they're already on the ropes because the US, or Trump specifically has cut NGO funding. So they're looking for ways to cut corners, cut costs, and that means AI imagery is being used. So this is a kind of investigative piece from The Guardian. It's hard to tell how prevalent this is, but it is very worrying. So these images appear on Adobe stock photos and FreePic in response to queries such as poverty, actually. So let's go ahead and have a look at that. Oh God, yeah. Okay. So if you just go to FreePic and you put in poverty, these are very obviously AI generated. They are labeled as AI, to be fair, but using these images on your website and in your marketing materials would be for the specific reason of raising money to help people. But these are not the people who need to be helped, because these people do not actually exist. So this looks, I mean, there are 100 pages or more. Let's see. I think there's probably going to be a lot more pages than 100. Let's try to see if there's 200 pages. Okay, I'm on page 100. So it looks like there's 100 pages, but each page has, I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. There are 62,000 results for poverty, and that is only AI generated. So there are 63,000 AI generated images of poverty on FreePic. Yeah, I can see why this is a problem. So where is it? I just saw here we go. Joaquin Abella, CEO of FreePic, said the responsibility for using such extreme images lay with media consumers, not with platforms such as his. That's handy. The AI stock photos, he said, are generated by the platform's global community of users who can receive a license fee when FreePic's customers choose to buy their imaging. So somebody's out there generating thousands, tens of thousands of these images, uploading them onto FreePic because charities, NGOs will then purchase, and the person who has created those images using AI will get paid. FreePic had attempted to curb biases it found in other parts of its photo library, he said, by injecting diversity and trying to ensure gender balance into the photos of lawyers and CEOs on the site. So there is a precedent of going in and curating the collection. But he said there's only so much his platform can do. It's like trying to dry the ocean. We make an effort, but in reality, if customers worldwide want images a certain way, there's absolutely nothing that anyone can do. That's interesting, because he could say no AI images on the website. So that is one way to fix this. They're deciding we're allowing AI images, and we are allowing AI images of poverty. Equally, he could allow AI images, but then not allow any to be uploaded under the header of poverty if he thought this was a real reason. But it sounds like he's deciding to ignore this. What I do find interesting, though, is that these charities can also generate these images themselves. They can go onto Nano Banana. They can go onto one of the many image generations or video generation tools and make these images themselves. But they're still going to FreePic, Shutterstock, Adobe stock images in order to get these images. I don't quite understand why, but they're not paying for something that is real. They're paying for something that is AI generated. If you were paying for something that was real and a photographer had been to one of these areas and got these images for you, and therefore you have an amount of legitimacy, I could understand that. But paying for an AI generated image of poverty, I don't quite understand the charity's reasoning here. In 2023, the Dutch arm of UK charity Plan International, I remember this, released a video campaign against child marriage, good, containing AI-generated images of a girl with a black eye, an older man, and a pregnant teenager. Problematic. And last year, the UN posted a video on YouTube with AI-generated reenactments of sexual violence in conflicts, which included AI-generated testimony from a Burundian woman describing an act of and left to die. So she did survive. So I can see why you might do that, because you can't necessarily have the actual person because their identity needs to be protected. But there are also definitely problems because you could just make things up. That's going to be the big issue here. The video was removed after The Guardian contacted the UN for comment. The UN peacekeeping spokesperson said the video in question, which was produced over a year ago using a fast-evolving tool, has been taken down as we believed it shows improper use of AI and may pose risks regarding information integrity, yes, blending real footage and near-real artificially generated content. That is even worse now. We've gone from near-real to real, basically. Sora 2, I would argue, took us over that bridge. We've crossed the uncanny valley, and now what we can create is indistinguishable from real images. So, yeah, go and check out this article. I'll put it in the newsletter tomorrow if you want to read it in detail, because it's an investigation, an exclusive investigation I've done, which is, I think, extremely problematic, but it is not going to be rare. This is going to be something that will become more and more common as we go forward. I've just booked a holiday. I'm going away next week, but I've booked it in the UK, which I'm thinking is a bit of a mistake. I'm sure it'll be lovely, but winter is setting in. Okay, Claude skills were announced last week and released. I covered them very briefly on the Friday show, and I've been playing around with them over the weekend, and they are very cool. Claude skills, I'll use the Simon Willison recap, are basically a new way of baking your expertise into your AI, and a really cool one, but in pure kind of Anthropic style. They've announced it and then just walked away from it. They don't make a big hoorah about their new features. Unlike OpenAI, who would have had a press conference, they would have done demonstrations. Topic are just like, oh yeah, we made something cool, and they put out a blog article and they're like, go and have fun with it. They underplay what they have built, unlike OpenAI, who tend to overplay. So Anthropic this morning, this is from last week, introduced Claude Skills, a new pattern for making new abilities available in their mods. So to quote Anthropic, Claude can now use skills to improve how to perform specific tasks. Skills include instructions, scripts, and resources that Claude can load when needed, and that's the important part. Claude will only access a skill when it is relevant to the task at hand. When used, skills make Claude better at specialized tasks like working with Excel or following your organization's brand guidelines. So we covered it in a lot more detail a few days ago, and there's some videos on YouTube where I go through them. But here's Simon Willison's take on it, and definitely go and follow Simon because he's one of the most knowledgeable people in the sector. So skills are conceptually extremely simple. A skill is a markdown file, so a text file basically, telling the model how to do something, optionally accompanied by extra documents and pre-written scripts that the model can run to help it accomplish the tasks described by the skill. Very simple. There's one extra detail that makes this a feature, not just a bunch of files on disk. At the start of a session, Claude's various harnesses can scan all available skill files that you have attached to that chat and read a short explanation for each one of the front matter, and it will decide whether or not it wants to use them in the task at hand. So as Simon says, this is very token efficient. Each skill only takes a few dozen extra tokens, with the full details only loaded should the user request a task that the skill can help solve. This is why they're cool. Imagine you have 20 or 30 of these kind of skill folders. Each of them is loaded up with details, like maybe you have one that replicates your tone of voice, and inside of it you've got a document talking about the type of language you use. You have some writing samples, you have some spoken samples of how you speak, and then you have instructions about how you would implement that. That normally, if you put that in your system prompt, or you dumped it in the beginning of a chat or in the custom instructions, that's going to be taking up a lot of tokens. And if you did that with 20, 30 different pieces of context, that's just going to clog up the context window. That means that if you are using the chatbot version, you are going to run out of context window a lot quicker, and your model is going to start forgetting things, hallucinating, just making a pig's ear of everything, or just say the chat's done, you have to start another one, because you've clogged it up with so much extraneous information that may or may not be used. Or if you're using the API, you're using software, that means you are very inefficiently sending all of that extra material back and forward. Think of it like an appendix. You might have a very short message that you're sending, but if you've got a huge appendix added to the back of it, you're going to be using a huge amount of tokens. So what skills do, very simple, is every single skill has a brief description. At the beginning of a chat or the beginning of a session, the AI is going to read all of those descriptions so it knows what skills it has available to it. And then when the context is right for it to pull on a certain skill, let's say part of your process is use my tone of voice to create this newsletter, to create this speech, it will then go and pull that additional information from the skill. Very simple, very clever. And I'm surprised it's taken this long for somebody to work out a system like this. So they are available inside of Claude. Let me show you where they are. If you go into Claude, in the sidebar, settings inside of your account, capabilities, and then you scroll all the way down to the bottom of capabilities, skills are going to be in preview, and there's a bunch of them that you can turn on, and you can also upload your own skills. So I think this is more exciting than MCPs because this is a lot easier to access, and they are portable across anything that you do. You can use your skills in the chatbot version on your telephone or browser. You can use them in software that you make in the API, etc. Doesn't matter. You can take these skills and they're portable anywhere. Very cool. And I'm going to be building a lot more of them this week. Simon's got something about skills compared to MCP. So MCP, may or may not have heard of it, but it's been a big thing this year. So MCP, or Model Context Protocol, great name. The engineers are great at naming these things, right? Has attracted an enormous amount of buzz since its initial release back in November last year, so it's been around about a year. I like to joke that one of the reasons it took off was every company knew they needed an AI strategy, and building or announcing an MCP implementation was an easy way to tick that box. So it's a cynical but probably quite accurate assessment from Simon there. Over time, the limitations of MCP have started to emerge. The most significant is in terms of token usage. GitHub's official MCP, for example, on its own famously consumes tens of thousands of tokens of context. And once you've added a few more, there's precious little space for the LLM to actually do useful work. So again, this is like adding a gigantic appendix to your work, and you might only have a few lines of actual instructions, but then you've got pages and pages and pages of additional information that may or may not be used to get those instructions done. This is the problem with MCP, that it loads everything in regardless. Skills do not, and that's why this is exciting. My own interest, this is Simon, not me, in MCPs has waned ever since I started taking coding agents seriously. Almost everything I might achieve with MCP can be handled by a command line interface tool instead. Large language models know how to call command line interface tools, which means you don't need to spend many tokens describing how to use it. Fair. Skills have exactly the same advantage, only now I don't even need to implement a command line interface tool. I can drop a markdown file in describing how to do the task instead, adding extra scripts only if they'll make things more reliable or efficient. And I think this is why it's exciting. It allows us to have the power of an MCP without using all the tokens and without having to resort to typing things into a command line or having our large language model connect to a command line, which means it is a lot more accessible for more people. The skills give us that same amount of power and functionality, but it's much easier to do. So if you have looked at MCP and you've thought, oh, I don't know what that is, that looks scary, have a look at skills, and they're going to be a lot more accessible, and they're going to be something that anyone can put into play. Awesome. So I will be experimenting a lot more with them this week, and I highly recommend you do as well. So check out the Simon Willison blog, which again will be in my newsletter. There's a free sign up in the link next to this video, and I'll also be writing about them. Maybe I'll do next Saturday's issue about them as well. Cool. So last thing that I want to cover, because again, there's not much news today. So Ethan Mollick, there are three kind of big commentators on artificial intelligence that I highly recommend you follow. In fact, I think I have them on if you go to my website, you have them in my learning guide at the bottom here. Yep, staying current, signal versus noise. I have three people. Oh, I need to add Simon here. So I've got Nate B. Jones, who you know, beard, beanie, glasses. I'm sure you know who he is. Ethan Mollick and Simon Willison are like the big three people that I recommend really paying attention to. They are all very good at explaining what is happening in artificial intelligence, but in easy, straightforward language, which is a hell of a skill because you really need to know what is happening in order to be able to explain. Ethan Mollick updates a guide every few months, which is basically a starter guide about, hey, you've just started to use AI, or what should you be using? What's the best one right now? What kind of tasks can you do, etc., etc. It's called an opinionated guide to using AI right now, and he updated it yesterday. So every few months, I write an opinionated guide on how to use AI. But now I write it in a world where 10% of humanity uses AI weekly. So it used to be, because he's been writing this for a couple of years, it used to be nobody was using this stuff, but now they are. The vast majority of that use involves free AI tools, which is often fine, except when it isn't. OpenAI recently released a breakdown of what people actually use ChatGPT for. Way less casual chat than you'd think, way more information seeking than you expected. This means I can finally give you advice based on real usage patterns instead of hunches. I annotated OpenAI's charts for some suggestions about when to use free versus advanced models. So what I wanted to go down to is which model you should be paying for. This is generally the most useful part here. So which system you should pay for, and then he talks about which model within the system. So if you want to use an advanced AI seriously, you'll need to pay either $20 or around $200 a month, depending on your needs. The $20 tier works for the vast majority of people, 100%, while the $200 is for people with complex technical and coding needs. I'd add to that capacity needs as well. So if you need to use a lot of Claude, for example, and you're using it for hours and hours every day, you will hit limits, so that you might need the 200. You will want to pick amongst three systems to spend your $20 on. Claude from Anthropic, Google's Gemini, or OpenAI's ChatGPT. I agree. These are the big three. I might even cut it down to just Claude or ChatGPT. But let's continue. With all of these options, you get access to advanced, agentic, and fast models, a voice mode, the ability to see images and documents, you can take photos and video, the ability to execute code, good mobile apps, the ability to create images and video, not in Claude, and the ability to do deep research. They, as he says, they basically all have the same feature set. They all mimic each other, like they all added research modes around the same time, all with slightly different names, but it's basically the same thing. They all have different personalities and strengths and weaknesses, but for most people, just selecting the one you like best will suffice. Yes, because at the end of the day, this is subjective, and this is an opinionated guide to using AI from Ethan Mollick. Some people just like the results that come from Claude, myself included. I use Claude as my general model because I like the way it thinks, I like the way it talks. That is subjective. We can look at benchmarks, we can say, oh, this is the best model. That kind of doesn't matter if it doesn't work for you. Ultimately, it has to work for you and how you think and how you want to work with an artificial intelligence. Some people love ChatGPT, some people love Claude, and that is subjective, and you cannot take that from people. They all have different personalities, strengths and weaknesses. Just select the one you like best. Try them all for free, see which one works, and then upgrade the one that you like best. Some people, especially big users of X, might want to consider Grok by Elon Musk's XAI, which has some of the most powerful AI models, yes, and is rapidly adding features extremely fast, but has not been as transparent about product safety as some of the other companies. For example, they didn't release a model card, which is unheard of. Everyone else plays by the same rules, and they say this is why our model is safe, these are the regulations and guidelines we put into it. No, they didn't bother. Microsoft Copilot offers many of the features of ChatGPT. It is built on ChatGPT and is accessible to users through Windows, but it can be hard to control what model we're using and when. Copilot's rubbish. He's being very diplomatic here. Copilot's terrible. So you choose which provider you want to use, and it's going to be Gemini by Google, it's going to be ChatGPT by OpenAI, or it's going to be Claude by Anthropic. They are really the big three at this moment if you are going to be paying for an AI. And then within each of those, there's going to be a model, and there are multiple models. Which one you use will depend on the task at hand. So part of the skill of using artificial intelligence is learning when to switch between the different models. So for your general go-to model that you're going to be using on a daily basis for chatting, for asking for book recommendations, or chatting through business ideas, the general model, you're going to be using Sonnet 4.5 inside of Claude. So Claude Sonnet 4.5. which is available in the free model as well. They used to have something called Opus 4.1. They still have Opus 4.1, but for most cases, Sonnet 4.5 is now the go-to model, and that is the basic standard model now. In Gemini, you will use Gemini 2.5 Flash. That is the fast model, and that's going to get you quick answers. So most of the time, you're going to use Flash. And in ChatGPT, you're going to use GPT-5 Auto. That's the one that will route you to different submodels, but for most cases, it's going to be absolutely fine. In terms of agent models, so if you're sending it off to go and do stuff for you, or you need extended thinking, or you need it to put together a research plan, a project plan for something that you're vibe coding, etc., you're going to use a more heavy-duty model. So in Claude, you're going to use extended thinking. So the way you do that is you press the plus button at the bottom of Claude, then you can toggle on extended thinking. I think it's got a little icon of a clock, and that will just mean it takes a lot longer and it will go into a lot more detail. So I was doing research the other day on a potential business in kind of the medical industry here in the UK, and I set it off on extended thinking, and it took 30 minutes or so and came back with about 600 sources, and it had gone through all of the different sources, found out the information it needed to, and then created a plan based on that. But you can only do that in extended thinking, which is available on Pro and Max. You cannot do that on the free plan right now. For most things, let's say you wanted to make a lasagna and you need a recipe, you're not going to put it in extended thinking because it would take too long to get the answer you need. You're going to put it in the standard model so you can get an answer in a few seconds instead of 20-30 minutes. So the agent model for Gemini would be Gemini 2.5 Pro, and the agent model for ChatGPT will be GPT-5 Thinking. So you can use the drop down and you can select the thinking mode. These are the three basic systems that you're going to use, and then you need to learn within it which model you should be using. One annoying thing here is that the models do change, so they keep adding new tweaks. Like, we'll probably get a new Opus model from Claude soon. They just released a haiku model as well, which most of the time you're not going to be using in the chat app. But part of the job of learning how to use AI is keeping up to date with what's available and what particular model you should be using within each system. So I highly recommend this article. I think he updates it every 2 or 3 months, an opinionated guide to using AI. Again, I'm going to add this into the newsletter so that you can find it and you can read it through in detail. It's not particularly long, and lots of you will already know this, but this is a really useful article if you have somebody ask you, what AI should I be using? Send them this article by Ethan Mollick, and that's going to help a lot. Cool. So I'm going to put all of these resources, so Simon Willison's breakdown of skills, Ethan Mollick's opinionated guide to using AI right now, and the other articles that we discussed. I'll put Andrej Karpathy's videos into the article as well, because again, people need to watch them. They're fantastic. And that's all going to be in the newsletter, which will come out. If you want to get a copy of that, it's totally free. Just make sure you're signed up for the newsletter. If you follow the link either in my bio or below this video, if you're watching this later. Awesome. I'm going to finish up a little bit early. Don't need to go much longer because I'm still a little bit worried that the internet as a whole is not working, because Amazon Web Services are having huge problems right now. I will be back with more AI news and updates of the day. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you. Cheers, guys.